Welcome. So we've managed to do 10 in-person business conversations now and 2 online. And they've been great and really fascinating. What happened in number 2 when I sat down with Nick Gordge was he came up with a fantastic idea. He said, look Ben, I really want to ask you a question. I said, why not? Let's go for it. So once we finished recording, Nick, and he really relished this, got in the hot seat and asked me a question around business development marketing. And then since then, every guest who's come in has put me on the hot spot. I don't know what the question is and just asked me a simple question. We've now stitched them together. So here's 9 of my answers to BD and marketing questions. It's just part of our business conversation series. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel and hit that bell notification so you don't miss any more of these great videos. But without any further ado, I'll pass you on to our fabulous guests who've all given up their time to share their stories with us. There'll be links in the descriptions to their individual videos as well. But here they are, asking me the questions.
So Ben, having started your own business, the BD Ladder, as a sole operator, what has been the biggest challenge that you've faced to generate clients and consistent clients, repeat business?
Well, look, Nick, that's a great question, and the story of the BD Ladder is quite an interesting one. We started in May 2020, so that was during a lockdown, and actually that was a good chance for me to think long term about what that business might be. It would have been quite easy for me to set up as a solo consultant, then Paul in can go out and try and win clients, and as a person who started off as B2B sales and then moved into the world of consultancy and advising professionals, that would have been my natural go-to. But I actually thought about what is it I want to do, and what do I want the BD Ladder to do, and how do I want it to help my clients and my target audience. And so we started to really think about the structure and what that business would look like. So that was really key. Building the website and all that kind of stuff, teaching myself to do it late night with some YouTube was really, really good. And as we built that, it kind of thought more about the offerings and the type of people we want. It was always clear to me that it would be professional services and quite distinct. And then I used my relationships and networks, the existing ones, to start getting those clients. That's been really successful, and that always will be, because people know you and trust you. And as you've spoken to when we had our conversation earlier in the year, you spoke about how in New Zealand those relationships were strong, and they embed. And for me, it's really great because I've worked for a number of years now. As people move up their careers, they move into more senior roles. They say they need some training, they're in some boutique areas or whatever. They become clients. So that's been really key. The other thing we focus on is stuff like today, though, like the YouTube and a lot of written content. And that content has, luckily for us, grown a global audience, which has allowed me to bring an associate on in Australia, and we still keep growing. We're looking at new people. And that content's also led to inquiries. So people I've not met before have come cold and actually approached me, and that's led to conversations and conversions. And we've had them not just in New Zealand, and not just Australia, but even further afield. So that's been a fantastic part. So kind of live and breathe what we do. The content actually works, and that's what we help our clients with as well. Content that converts and generates leads. That's been a massive part of what we do. One thing I have done less of, which is what I'm trying to do as I build a business, is actually go out after people cold and make some of those colder introductions. You don't necessarily need to do it in this organisation, but I actually really enjoy it. It's something I grew up doing on a sales floor in London, getting to some of the bigger corporations, and actually, once we have that few interactions and stuff like that, follow up the marketing campaigns, the conversion will be there. You always need to build new clients as well. There's a finite piece in consulting. You do a good job, people will go on. Yes, they'll call you back, but the main bulk of the work is done and they've progressed. So yeah, great question. That's how we go about it here at the BD Ladder.
Cool, thanks for sharing.
Okay, so Ben, question for you. What do you say to lawyers who call marketing and business development mumbo jumbo?
Well, I've given one answer in my inner voice, but realistically, I take a step back and say, look, you've got to grow your practice. We all know you need marketing and business development to do that. But we need to show you the value and what it is and which one will work for you. So when I sort of created the BD Ladder, one of the most fundamental parts for me was that there's so much in the marketing and business development mix you can use and employ. And what's right for one lawyer isn't right for another lawyer, right? So yes, there's an element of discomfort. We will sometimes assist them in doing stuff which maybe they're less comfortable with, but we will never put them in that zone where they're absolutely panicked and petrified and it's too much for them, right?
Gotcha.
So understanding their clients and what their clients would like, how they can better access those clients, and then building a plan within the time and budget that works for them, and saying, look, this is where it is, these are the aspects you want to do. Have that intelligent conversation, be confident and calm in what we do, then hopefully it becomes magic, not mumbo jumbo.
Brilliant. I love that. Thank you.
Thinking about your own career in terms of BD sales, what is the one tip that you would share with your viewers that's been most helpful to win new work?
So that's a really great question, and you're throwing my own question back at me. So the one tip I would say is always remember that everyone you speak to is important, and always focus on building your networks and staying in touch meaningfully early. The earlier you start, the easier it is. And as you move countries, as I know we both have, that ability to kind of know how to build networks and talk to people and find things and help them with what they're doing is really, really powerful. Because every time you go somewhere new, you've got to start again.
Yes.
And you're cutting into the old school networks and you're cutting into the established networks. So you've almost got to not be afraid to build in, but build in meaningfully.
Yeah.
And slowly. And it just takes time, and be patient and trust yourself on that. So
somebody said to me recently, instead of networking, he used the phrase making friends.
yeah, absolutely. Great phrase.
Yeah. Terrific.
Okay, Ben, so now I get to ask you a question.
Yeah.
And so I've thought up a nice hard one for you as well.
Good.
When I used to see how law firms operated, sometimes, often perhaps, the partners and the senior people in the firms didn't always listen to their BD and marketing professionals and perhaps thought they knew better.
Yeah.
Have you got any tips for people who are in firms and watching this and they're BD and marketing professionals? How do they get that cut through? How can they get the buy-in with their internal stakeholders to get them to listen to them?
And it's tricky, right? And sometimes, because of the role and the way it is in the dealing with owners of a business, it feels like they have the natural right to almost put you aside. I like to work on this thing which I share with people in this space, which is actually a stakeholder chart. So it's actually going back to your sales basics. You know, who have I got good relationships with? Who have I got bad relationships with? What are their key drivers and outcomes in every different practice area? And how can I help them achieve and align to that? And how can I build a conversation based on their outcomes? So it's more around providing a service and an equal conversation and having the ability to sometimes actually turn around and go, look, we'll do it your way. I disagree. We'll do it your way. And afterwards, I'll give you my recommendation of how it should move forward the other way. So being a little bit stronger, but that's often respected. And I found, particularly in the legal profession, that sometimes people, when they've got time to reflect after it's calmed down, they look back and they look at the different options and come up there, they might then go, actually, that way was actually quite good. And then adopt it as their way, which is fine. And that's another part of it as well, trying to ask questions so the person doesn't feel like forcing the solution on them, but actually, as you would with any client interaction, go on the journey to get them to come up with a solution. Hopefully that will help people with what's a really tricky question.
So I always find it's interesting that, you can get a meeting established, but often on the day of the meeting, you'll get an email from the person you're meeting with to say, look, I'm sorry, another meeting has come up. Now, this happens most frequently to salespeople or recruiters. How do you deal with that? What's your response to that?
I think it's because there hasn't been a clear enough purpose and there's almost been a desperation to get the meeting. Yeah. So when we work with our clients, we do this across all manner of professional services, we actually advocate that you send out an agenda the day before the meeting, reaffirming the meeting and reaffirming what you'll be discussing and the value the person will get from that meeting.
Excellent.
That makes it sticky. Actually, if they cancel it, they'll think of you well because you've saved them half an hour they never wanted to give. But if they look in the calendar and think the salesperson thinking they're just going to get a demo, they're most likely to cancel it. So it's better to have good meetings, reaffirm it, get the agenda out. It also leads to a very purpose-led conversation.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ben.
Okay, Ben, I'm in the driving seat now, so my chance to ask you a question. So I'd be really interested to hear from your perspective. What do you think is the biggest challenge for the BD sector at the moment?
Really good points. There's a lot going on there right now. I think that the biggest challenge will remain the one it always is, which is to make sure that your value is understood by those you work with. So if the partnership understands what you're doing and the value it brings, that'll be great. Yes, there's an upskilling around AI. Yes, there's understanding what the market is and what is there. But really, it's about bringing that customer experience within your own firm. How do you work well with the key stakeholders? How do you bring them all on the journey? How does it all work? Doesn't matter which role you're in BD and marketing. Ultimately, the business needs to be together. There should never be a disconnect between marketing and the business in any role. Forget professional services. It needs to be there. Sales and marketing need to be aligned. BD and marketing need to be aligned. Bring the stakeholders on the journey. Walk them through. Explain the value they get. Explain why it's going to happen. And then you'll be successful. So that's the biggest challenge. It sounds really easy in practice when I say it, but putting it in practice is much harder. So yeah, that's the biggest challenge.
Awesome. Cool. I agree.
What's your advice on dealing with failure? How do you respond to the client that said no to you?
So someone said no to you. The first thing is embrace failure. So that's a hard thing to say, but in professional environment, most of my clients don't like failing. In fact, their DNA is not to fail because you don't want to do that in your professional career. But when you're dealing with relationships and people, you won't win every time. Even if you do the perfect process, and it is annoying, perfect sales process, you will lose. So first of all, recognize that and try and understand and seek to have a conversation to find out where it's gone wrong. Really dig deeper. And if it really matters to you, get someone independent of that team. And if really possible, get someone independent of your company to go and get that feedback. Particularly here in New Zealand and in most cultures, leaving aside some of the more direct ones, they won't like to tell you to face what they don't like. And it could be people within their team. It could be they just don't get on with someone. It is a relationship thing. Or it could just be that someone's better. But digging down in, getting that independent with a real bit of client listening, as it's now called, is really, really key. Because until you do that and acknowledge it, you'll always keep losing. And when they tell you came a narrow, close second, never believe that. Dig deeper. I've only experienced that once in my career when a close second was truly a close second. Or if you lost on price, it tends not to be on price. It's something deeper, particularly in the work that we're talking about here. It's really important to clients to get it right. And just acknowledge sometimes that, you're a loose competitor. As long as it's one of the ones you respect, it's okay. There are other good people out there.
Yeah. So Ben, let me ask you a question. What's the difference between BD and sales?
Wow. And I thought you were going to say BD and marketing, which is the most common question, but BD and sales, very fine line. So ultimately, business development is about creating those activities and opportunities that bring revenue into the business. So working through that kind of strategy of what it would be in its purest form. So what do we need to do? What structure we need to have in place? And what activities we need to do to help bring that in? Sales is kind of like the last piece of that puzzle. What do we do to actually get it in? How do we bring it over the line? How do we actually interact with the people and make sure it happens? As people like the close. I mean, the close is kind of only ever happens if everything else has been put in the right place and the client will naturally buy from you. We're very much about business development, about being salesy here. But at the same time, everyone who, as we had in our discussion, talks about, bringing in work and sales by the hour, ultimately in the sales business at some point. If you have a service, you're in the sales business, and that's who we work with here. And sometimes we just call sales business development because our clients enjoy it more and they don't like the term sales. So there is a slight difference. The importance is just to know which activities you're doing. It doesn't matter what you term it, but just have that nice, clear structure so you can actually know what you're doing well, know where you can improve, know where you can bring that work in.
Love it. Thank you.
Ben, question for you.
Yep.
Okay, so the analogy that lawyers are like herding cats.
Yes.
Getting them to do something. So can you tell me what are the challenges you have in getting lawyers to engage well with business development?
So the first thing is to understand that it's not something that lawyers necessarily want to do. And to understand that while it's my passion, it's not necessarily their passion, but it's something they don't need to do. and then find out why they need it. So let's go to the why. Why is it important to them? What does it mean? Will it help them grow their business? Will it help them get into new markets, do the interesting work they want to do? Let's find that common why. And then once we go there, we can build into actually what they need to do, the skills, the habits, the discipline, and take them on that journey. But you've got to unpack it. And you've got to understand that just because it's right for them, they won't necessarily do it. We all know sometimes we should go to the doctor, but we don't. We should go to the gym, but we don't. Or we should all do BD in professional services if we need to bring in clients, but we don't, because we feel it's salesy and all that stuff. So we have to overcome the fears and walk through it, then articulate the benefits, and then bring people on that journey and give them the skills and discipline, the habit to go forward. So it's a relatively simple process, but it takes resilience and the courage to have the right conversations with the right people to drive them forward.
Good answer, Ben. Thanks.
Well, I'm sure you enjoyed that, and we have more business conversations coming up in the next few months. So as I said earlier in the video at the start, do remember to like and subscribe to our channel and hit that bell notification. If you like the idea of just asking me questions, put me on the spot and seeing how I can help your business, in the descriptions you'll find a link to our BD and Marketing Power Hour, where you can engage my services to do just that in an hour. I can run through your senior leadership team or your individual sales teams or your group and practice teams or whatever it might be, and understand your challenges and get really into it and the real life scenarios and provide you with practical advice in the moment to help you drive that business forward. So until next time, bye for now.